This got timer. Hello and welcome on our expert webinar series for the entrepreneurs and startup group in Malaysia. I am very happy here today. We have my good friend Dr. Lau Chen Han. Dr. Lau, welcome.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for the invite.
Yeah, so today we actually have Dr. Lau who is going to share about understanding big data for entrepreneurs. I think there's a lot of misnomer and people who actually do not know what is big data and actually how can they leverage on big data, because it's one of those big buzzwords that everyone hear about. But before we actually get Dr. Lau to start and introduce himself and to talk about the wonderful things that he does, I'd just like to just thank a bit on our sponsor, ASUS. ASUS has actually reached out to come on board to actually help us to get this thing possible. So we'd like to thank ASUS Expert Series. They are doing quite amazing job with their laptop series, actually, the Expert laptop series that we'll be talking about that later. I understand Dr. Lau is a ASUS user for his other hobby, gaming.
That's right.
Okay, so I'm just gonna. So Dr. Lau, I know you have a wide variety of titles. You are the founder of Lead, which is a trading academy teaching people a bunch of future-proof skill sets. You are also the founder of Corona Tracker, which is one of the tools that I've been using last year. Can you share a bit on that before we start?
Sure. Hi, everyone. This is Han or Dr. Lau, commonly known as Dr. Lau. Yeah, like Daniel said, I'm the chief data scientist, and we do a lot of training, consulting, and also the product development for a lot of companies, SMEs, basically to help them to grow their data science team. And also last year, we founded coronatracker.com. We are one of the top three data provider or repository for COVID-19 virus information and data. We do things like open data. We provide APIs. So if you use websites like JHU, you use website like Wordometer, you know that they do not have an open API. So we are the sort of like the first one that does that. And one of the few that consistently doing it until today.
I know you got some really amazing traffic coming in from there. Like, can you share some of those details?
Sure. So right now we have close to 20 million unique users, unique visitors from around the world, and also we have close to, I think, 100 million unique page views so far. And one of the things that I think that's interesting is that we help a lot of countries with, including their organizations, their NGO, and also their Ministry or Department of Health, to use this data to help them to plan a lot of things, especially during last year, middle of last year, when everyone was sort of like don't know what to do, and not many countries they have set up such a repository to collect and analyze the data. So yeah, it does help quite a number of people.
Amazing. And Dr. Lau, like before we start, actually, like how do you got involved in big data?
It's it's a bit of I wouldn't say funny, but it wasn't something that I planned, right? I didn't wake up one day and say, okay, lah, I would like to do big data. It's sort of a couple of reasons that drives the development of big data. Mainly is because of the drop of the price of storage. So if you remember, Daniel, right, 20 years ago, if your birthday and I give you a thumb drive of 128 megabyte, you'll be very happy, right? But if today, if I give you a flash card, like a SD card of 128 gig, probably is a bit too little, especially if you do a lot of photographies and videos work, right?
Yep.
So the storage price definitely dropped a lot, so that it allows us to collect all sort of different data rather than just text and numbers. That's one of the thing. And from my perspective, or on my end, I have been doing a lot of development work, and as I progress in my career and as age is catching up, so I have to make the decisions like, okay, do I still want to continue to be a CTO? Do I still continue to run startups and stuff? But 2014, when I came back, I was the first director of academy for Magic, right? And I look at the entire market and realize that what those SMEs really need, they don't really need another app developers, or they don't really need another full stack developers. We have a lot of talented people in that area. But what they really need from a business point of view is they have a lot of data sitting there. It doesn't matter. Actually, it doesn't really matter whether you're SME or you're big corporates. You have a lot of data and you don't know what to do with it. So I think that's one of the main reason that drives me into diving into big data further.
Okay, so we will let you go ahead with your presentation. We have a whole bunch of questions
Yeah.
coming in, so I will get to that later. So, Dr. Lau, just please proceed.
All right. So once again, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to my session, and of course, thank you, Daniel, for the invitations. Today, we're going to talk about understanding big data for entrepreneurs. I prepared the slides, just a bit of visuals. It's a session that is relaxed, semi-formal, okay, and not just feel free to ask me any questions. I'm more than happy to answer them. And in terms of big data for entrepreneurs, this is, like Daniel said, to you is a buzzword, but to us it's just another terminology. And especially when it comes to things like big and small, these are relative measures. You know what I mean? Like something that's big today could be small down 3 to 5 years down the road. So for you, what you really need to know as an entrepreneur is that what is big data, and also what are the algorithms that you need, like what sort of business questions that you help to answer, and also what are the tools that data scientists use so that you can help to um, use these tools in your own company. So I can give you a teaser. All of these tools are free and open source. Okay, don't worry. I'm a big fan of open source and these sort of tools. Then, so that if you run this sort of analysis and build your own models, you wouldn't be kidnapped by any sort of expensive licensings and proprietary softwares. I think Daniel gave a good introduction about myself already, so I'm not going through this list. But just to give you a bit of background, before this, I was also the state advisor for smart city and big data analytics. So if you have any questions regarding policy making, what sort of data that we are collecting, and also our PDPA, that sort of things that I can help to answer as well. And also my company, we are MDEC data training partner, so we are actively working very closely with MDEC to drive the whether is it the big data framework or national AI plan blueprint as well. Okay, now to understand big data, right? Actually, you wouldn't need to go through everything, all the ABCDs that people are talking about, like artificial intelligence, big data, cloud computing, or data science, and all those buzzwords like blockchains, other things. It doesn't really matter. Okay, at least for at the starting stage. But what you really need to know is what is data and how these data help you in terms of your business and your company. And whenever you have any sort of information that comes in, right? We always say nowadays we're in the era of IT. But where does IT stands? And if you watch any of videos from Jack Ma, he actually make the point that we are now in the data technologies or DT era, if you remember this. So data. Let's start from the top. Yeah, wisdom is something that's ultimately what we want, because wisdom actually help us to perform some actions. Okay, every actions that you make, every decisions that you come to is actually an outcome of your wisdom. So wisdom comes in many form, right? If you look at traditional businesses, we have conventional wisdoms, and that's passed down from our parents, our grandparents. And if you look at a lot of traditional businesses, they face this problem where their knowledge, their business experience is very hard to be passed down, because they are not in the tangible form. So it has to be in a format like, let's say in Chinese, they always do storytellings, and they always need to bring their sons or their grandsons together so that they can accumulate their sort of experience. And that process is not copyable and not scalable, and it takes time. Like, depends on your capability as well. Some people take 5 to 10 years, some people take 10 to 15 years. And in today's world, so wisdom is something that's not going to be expired most of the time. But to get to that level of wisdom is rather tough. Okay, time consuming, and there's no sure way or no clear path to achieve so in the technology world, in today's world, that's what we call artificial intelligence. So what we try to do is we try to build some AI machines or AI models that can help us to perform those actions. Okay, and then under wisdom we have knowledge. So if you are somewhere around my age, you should have remembered that around year 2000 we have these very popular technologies called knowledge management, or KM, and these come even before we have Wikipedia. So before Wikipedia, we have all sort of things that is organized in the form of directory or dictionary. So let's say you want to look for restaurants, then you look for restaurants, and then you need to look for cuisines, and then you look for cuisines like, okay, there are Chinese food, there are halal food, there are Western foods, and then under each categories you have all sort of subcategories, and this is what we call knowledge. All right, so knowledge gives us insights, and if you watch some data science talks before, or you have attended some data science conference, we talk about all those actionable insights, and this is actually, they comes in the package lah. All right, so in terms of the corresponding technology, we call it knowledge management, or KM. Now, one characteristic of knowledge is it will expire. And the common way to get knowledge is actually through books, right? So if you look at some of the books, bestseller books, if they teach you something that has a wisdom, they will last a bit longer. But if they teach you something that's more contemporary, then that book will expire like within 3, 5, or 10 years. And that's why you always see first edition, second edition, third editions. So that's the characteristic of knowledge. And then next up, we move to the information. So this is where we are currently at, and soon we are moving past this stage because we're at the IT era where we need to do a lot of information. So information actually is organized data that helps to answer specific questions, right? If you have information, then you can answer like who, what, where, when, and how, these sort of questions. You don't use knowledge to answer these questions because knowledge is to give you insights, right? But information is the one that you need to answer this question, like what is our sales last quarter? Okay, how many employees have left our company? How many members we have? How many new subscribed members that we have? All sort of questions like these needs to be answered by information. And then the rawest form, or the lowest level of the knowledge, is actually data. Now, a lot of people, they say, right, data is the new form of oil and AI is the new form of artificial intelligence. So if you inverse this pyramid, it works that way as well. So if you look at it from as a funnel, right, data is the rawest form. So it gives you everything that you need, but you need to find a way to refine those data to extract the information and get to the artificial intelligence that you want. All right, so data is a collection of facts in its rawest form, and therefore, in order to understand data, we need to have a lot of context. So this is what we call the knowledge pyramid, or what we call the DIKW framework, stands for data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. So if you want to apply these, right, and you can, let's look at this example. So our data should that we can get is transaction data from 2019, and then after we have analyzed this data, we can use it to get some information basically about your user profiles. Okay, how many users are from KL, PJ area, what is their age, what is their demographics, their income levels, their education levels, etc. All right, so after you have analyzed these user profiles, what you learn from there is actually those user preferences, the insights, right? For example, in e-commerce, we often see this, or in retail, people who buy bread, they also buy peanut butter, they also buy kaya. And then in our case, we can say, oh, maybe we learned that guys between 28 to 35 years old, they, on average, they bought 2 pink shirts per year. So this is something that you know, and your competitor may or may not know. So this will be your competitive edge and your advantage. And what you are going to do with this knowledge, right? When you take actions, every time when there's a customers who visit your e-commerce website, what you're going to do is you're going to recommend pink shirts to those customers whose age are somewhere between 28 to 35 years old. And these are the actions that you take. Okay, so I hope by this example, you understand the role of data, the role of big data in terms of how you get to the artificial intelligence level. And this is the foundations or the fundamental setup of a recommendation system. You can change this to anything. You can change this to a YouTube video, a Netflix video, and this will still be valid. Okay, so I'm not going into too much of the technical stuff, but if you have collected any sort of data, you can think along this direction and use it for your own benefits. Okay, so next one. Now, what is big data? That is data, right? So, if you think about getting data in any of the companies, organizations, corporates, right? This is where you get data. You intuitively you think about this. All right, I have HR systems, I have sales systems, I have finance systems, procurement vendor systems, right? And these systems usually produce structured data like this: your customer data, your product details, your transactions, your email, your customer feedback, right? This is the old data, old form of data that we have been collecting for the past 20 to 30 years. Fine. But in today's world, let's look at this picture. It's not just about those HR finance systems, right? If you're running, especially if you're running a tech startup, if you're running a company that has a lot of social media presence, you go on TikTok, you go on Facebook, you go on YouTube, right? You have all sort of other things. Now, you just take a quick glimpse of what is happening in 60 seconds in 2020. Now, for every 60 seconds that gone, we have 190 million email sends, and we have 600 thousands of Instagram posts, scrolls, and we have 59 million messages, etc. Now, all these related information that does not come from your HR, your procurement, your finance systems, right? But they are also related to other parts that help you to understand your customers or understand your business a lot more. It covers entertainment, it covers your social interactions, social activities, communication, work, shopping, and relationships. So, how are you going to analyze this data? What does this data play? What role does this data play in your business, right? And what they generate is a lot of unstructured data, and these are the basis of big data: photos, music, video, and text. These are the sort of data that you cannot analyze using normal ways. Like if you have 100 pictures that you have downloaded from Instagram about your competitor, right? You want to know what is the latest trend, fashion trend in the world. Are you able to do so in Excel? No, you can't, right? Let's say you have 1,000 products. Okay, you have 1,000 SKUs in your e-commerce store, and each SKU we have about 100 comments and reviews. So now you have 100,000 product reviews that you need to analyze. How you're going to do that? And that's the basis of big data. So there are three things that you need to remember when you are collecting data, big data. Sorry. Number one is the volume. Of course, big data is all about volume. So your volume needs to be huge in order to be considered big data. But there are two other factors, which is the velocity, which are the speed. So if your data is static and they don't come in very often, right, this cannot be considered as a big data. And the third thing that you need is variety, which is something that we're talking about here. If you just have things like structured data, tables, rows, and columns kind of data, these are not qualified to be considered as big data as well. Okay, these can only be considered as structured data. So you, at the minimum, based on definition, it needs to fit the three requirements: so the volume, the velocity, and the variety, in order to be considered big data. So what can we do with big data? All right. So you collected this data, you collected videos, you collected text reviews from there. What sort of business questions that we can use big data to answer? So that's where data science come in, right? I'm a chief data scientist that I do a lot of big data analytics. So there are three typical types of questions that we can use data science to answer these big data questions. Number one, is this A or B? Number two, how much or how many? Number three, how things are organized. Okay. Now, after my explanation, right, you can relate this with your business and try and see how many percent of your business can be automated, or how many business questions that you have can be answered by these three algorithms. Okay. So the first one is this A or B? Right? Is this A or B? Is actually a typical classification problem, is what we call. In classification, what we want to do is we want to assign the right class to our data points. So for example, if you have an employee, you want to use HR analytics to predict whether this employee is going to leave next month or not. Okay, so yes or no. Or if you are running a telco company, you are going to use the big data together with this question to help you to answer, is this subscriber going to unsubscribe or going to churn to switch to another telco company? And the second type is which ads is more effective. Now we have done a lot of digital marketing in the past, right? You have run a lot of Facebook ads, but when it comes to Facebook ads, there are different types of titles, there are different types of content. So how are you going to tell which title is going to attract more conversion rate or more open rate or more CTR, click-through rate? So we can use a machine learning models to answer you, okay, version A or version B. Now the third one is very interesting. What movie categories is this? Thriller, romance, or adventure? Now if you go to Netflix, right, you look at their genre, there are a lot of micro categories in Netflix. Go if you have Netflix, just later on you can go and click and check it out. This is what contributes to the success of Netflix. A lot of people, when they are doing movies classification, right? Let's say they are old competitors like blockbusters, they always classify the movies in very high level categories: thriller, comedy, and then let's say action movie. But there are a lot of movies that has multiple dimensions, right? Some of the action movies can be action comedy. Some of the drama can be drama love stories. It can be war stories that's about love as well. And it can be thriller, but also there's action type of thriller or thriller type of comedy. Many, many different types of combinations. So if you go to Netflix websites, you can see that there are a lot of micro categories. And this is how Netflix use big data to build a successful recommendation engines that suggest the movies that you would like comparing to other websites that have done. Okay, so this is the first type, classification, meaning that we use it to predict an outcome or a particular nature of class of our data points. Now, the second one is how much or how many. How many in data science term or in analysis term is what we call regressions. It's a very simple technique. Basically, we use it to predict the future values based on the input variables. And we use this technique to look at two or more variables and look at their relationships. So, for example, you want to predict what is the temperature tonight, right? If the temperature is high, what are you going to do? If the temperature is low, what are you going to do? And the second one is what will be the next quarter sales be? So this is if classification is to predict an outcome, a category, a label, regression is to predict a value, yeah, a value, a future value based on your input data. So you know that we can use regressions to help us to find the cause and effect relationship between variables, and this will help us to identify which variables or which input data contribute more to our outcome, to the outcome that we want. Now, the two methods that I have mentioned, right, regressions and also the classification, these are more towards supervised methods, meaning that when you want to use these two methods, you need to have some sort of training data. You need to provide historical data in order to build the models. What if sometimes you don't have the historical data, but you still want to analyze? Okay, so we're going to use another method called clustering. Clustering is to help us to understand how things are organized. Imagine you are running an e-commerce website again. Now you have a lot of transaction data, or if you are gathering a mailing list, right? You get 1,000 email subscribers. How are you going to group these into meaningful groups that can help you to understand your target audience better? And this is what clustering does. Clustering basically helps us to group items together based on their similarities. It could be based on their characteristic of that particular data points, or it could be based on the activity itself, the transactional data. So for example, we can see which viewers likes the same types of movie. So if you look at the circles here, right, we can group them based on the types of movies that they have watched. So some people, they like to watch cartoons, some people they like to watch thrillers, some people they like to watch comedy, right? And these people who watch similar type of movies, you can recommend movies to the others based on, like for example, if me and Daniel, we both watch, let's say, Scary Movie 1, right? And they know that we like this sort of funny things, and I have watched 50 First Date, but Daniel did not, and the system will try to recommend 50 First Date to Daniel because we both fall under the same categories or same cluster. And the second one is which models of the printers fails the same way. And this one is very easy to understand. If this cluster is printers that fail, they come back to claim warranty after 18 months, which is fine. And these are the printers that come back to claim warranty 12 months, and then 9 months, and then 3 months, and 6 months. And your boss want to find out how come this group of people, they come back and claim their printers after 3 months. That's too quick. And then you check these printers that fail to within 3 months, and you realize that, oh, they're all using the same power supply. And this is where you can issue a recall. Yeah, all these are the questions that we can use clustering to help us to answer. Now, you might be saying like, Dr. Lau, those things that you say, we can do it with Excel. But don't forget, we're talking about big data. Yeah, Excel can only handle 1 million rows of record, 1 million plus minus at one time. But if you have used Excel actively, you will realize that if you have more than 200,000 rows of records, Excel starts to behave a bit weirdly already, very slow, and then your hard disk keeps spinning, right? Yeah, so that's the reason why we need to use advanced algorithms like this. And imagine you have millions of data points, millions of transactions record, millions of users. These three techniques are going to be very useful and very helpful for your business. Okay, so how do you get started if you want to move your organization into big data analytics direction? Number one, get your hands dirty. Okay, you probably want to look at some other data sets that is already out there, and what are the industry problems that people are already solving, or that have been solved. So I would like to introduce you to this website called Kaggle.com. Now, Kaggle.com is a very interesting website. It covers everything that you need for big data analytics. It covers data sets, it covers your code, and it also covers your money. All right. If you're an individual who would like to start analyzing big data, Kaggle.com is also a best place to go to. Now, in Kaggle, it provides industry-grade data sets. So it covers finance, healthcare, retail, property, cartoon. A lot of times when you try to Google for data sets online, right, they'll give you some toy data set. That's how I call it, Titanic data set, flower data set. We use it in shop, that's fine. But when you want to learn the industry problems, when you want to get some insights of a particular industry, you better use some industry grade data sets. And all these data sets comes with public notebooks and codes as well. So you can look at how people actually go in and analyze this data and what they have done with it. And next one is you can benchmark your skills as well. So there are a lot of competitions out there. So if you would like to take part in the competition, some of the prize are quite attractive. So you can submit your own models and to benchmark your skills. Yeah. So to know that whether your a lot of times students will ask me, say, Dr. I built a model. This model performance, like accuracy, is 70%. Okay, is 70% good or bad? I don't know. Put it into a competition and compete with others. Then you know how well your model performs. All right, the second thing is pick a niche. Now, a lot of companies, when they want to dive into big data, right, the bosses think too big. Yeah, they think big, and then they start with a very grand kind of plan, like they painted a very big picture, which I'm going to suggest and counterintuitive way to do it, which is to pick a niche. Now, there are many different areas in data science. There are many different areas from visualization, text mining, machine learning, and also there are different types of areas that you can go in, like data engineering, business analysis. So whether you are a company or whether you are individuals that work in this sort of big data science project, right? You should always look at different areas to start with. Yeah, don't try to get everything done at one go. Find one area that benefits your business the most. In most cases, I would say visualizations. Yeah, but sometimes if you have a lot of reviews, a lot of products, you can try text mining as well, and you can do business analysis and machine learning or data engineering. These are all important aspects that you should consider to begin with when you have a big data problem. And then, last but not least, show off your capabilities. Now, a lot of people, this one is mainly for the individuals. When they are starting to learn big data, when they are looking for, especially like entrepreneurs, right, they do not show off their capabilities. So they do not document what they have done. So for individual students, I usually recommend them to build a portfolio. Or if not, as a company, right, you should always build an engineering blocks. If you look at companies like Grab, Gojek, Airbnb, they always have an engineering blocks that tell people that what they do. Yeah, and this is a very good way to show off your capabilities, and that will help your business a lot in terms of moving forwards with your big data capabilities and to grow yourself. Because and if you are doing hiring or if you are gathering more team members, right, showing off your capabilities will also help to attract other talented people to join your companies. So before we hit back, my closing remark, a take home message for you is, without data, you're just another person with opinion. All right. So no matter what you do, whether you're speaking to your customers, whether you are showing your results, your financial results to your stakeholders, your partners, your VCs for investment, etc. Right. As an entrepreneur, you should always use data to help you to back your decisions. And even if you are speaking to your customers or clients, having data is also another ways to help to convince them to buy your idea. All right. So thank you very much. And then over to you, Daniel.
Hi, thank you very much, Dr. Lau. I really appreciate that. I understand you also have some slides that you wanted to show, right, just now?
So you didn't see everything that I shared just now.
No, unfortunately.
I think the sharing went off. No wonder. And yeah.
No worries. We can just quickly go through that again.
Okay. Anyway, so that's a shame. No, that's the thing. I don't see the notification. Now you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll quickly go through. Just give me a minute, right? Everything that I've mentioned just now. Ha ha. Yes. Did you message me? You did,
Yes.
right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, I usually turn them off. That's the thing. Okay, never mind. All right, so this is I'll convert them into a PDF so that you can share it under the video lah, together for the audience. So this is the knowledge pyramid that I mentioned, and then this is the big data thing that I talk about. Okay, and then this is the type of unstructured data that I mentioned, and this is what we can do with big data. Okay, and problem with the web-based thing. I'm not really familiar with that. Let me show a couple of important ones. Okay, just show the final one, which is the type of niche that you can select, and also the last one. All right, without data, you're just a person with opinion. So you guys have been watching my face all the time.
No, it was actually very insightful. Actually, like just I like the way how you explain everything so simple and easy that I can follow even without much reference. So,
Okay, all right. Anyway, I'll stop the share screen and then we'll attach it as a PDF file later. Happy to
so
share.
thank you very much. And so before we actually go into Q and A, we know there's a whole bunch of questions that actually came in, and I'll
Okay.
just yeah. So before we actually go into the Q and A, I want to just like also like to just like take a note to thank our sponsors for this series, ASUS, which with their expert series laptop. So just as a data scientist, like what do you look for a business laptop actually? Like you're an entrepreneur, you're a data scientist. What key areas that you look for?
Okay, so usually when we do data processing, right, when we're analyzing some private and confidential data, and when we don't have internet, we definitely look at the speed, the processor speed, and the hard disk speed. So the I/O is very important. And the second thing I think everybody knows is the battery power. Yeah,
Mm. So,
battery
so
life.
yeah, the thing that is actually quite interesting is the expert series, which is actually their expert book B4 has 24-hour battery, which is really impressive. Especially that's something I really want to test out to the max, basically, because when we, especially I know both of us travel quite a fair bit. That is
Yep.
battery life is super important. And the best part is this is actually it's as light as 870 gram, which is really
Oh.
like yeah. I also understand that I also understand that you are actually like you use a what laptop do you use yourself actually?
I do have two, right? So when I'm doing some sort of coding, or like normal word processing and emails like that, I use the Apple M1 because it's easier to use and it works well with my phone, the entire ecosystem. But I do have another Windows machines. There's an ASUS machine because we need that for tools like Microsoft Series, Microsoft Suites, and also like Power BI. Yeah. So for my case, in fact, most of the data scientists, we do have machines that runs both. And if we get like something that's a non-Apple type of machine, we can always install other operating systems which works fine as well.
So I understand your machine is actually the Asus ROG,
Yes, that's right.
and so that's been quite reliable for you, right?
Yes, very reliable. Yeah, and to be honest, right? Not just because well, this show is sponsored or what. Every time when we go for we go and shop for stuff like whether is it your monitor, your motherboards, the shop people, they will always say that if you want something that's more reliable, you should go for the Asus one rather than other brands. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that actually that's something that like that's why I'm quite grateful that Asus sponsor because that's something that I tend to recommend
Yes.
because they have like this 3 years international warranty and
Yeah.
on-site service, which is actually the best for entrepreneurs, so they don't have to think of it. It's actually hassle free. So
Yeah,
that's
and
actually
it's not so much about the warranty period. Of course, that's the good thing, right?
mm,
The best thing is you don't have to always go and replace. And like my previous version of MacBook Pro, the old keyboards always have problems, and every time because we don't have a Apple store here, so every time when you go to the service center, it will take like 2 weeks to come back. Yeah.
yeah. So I think one of the tests is basically they actually do open and close for the clamshell for 50,000 times,
Yeah.
which is very impressive. And yeah, so thank you again, ASUS, for sponsoring this. Let's go to the questions. Actually, we have a whole bunch of actually questions that came
Okay.
out, came out earlier. But before that, I noticed that actually you have something that you have learned data science without coding in lead. Like, can you explain a bit more about that?
Sure. So a lot of time people think that, oh, when I want to learn data science, I must start with something like Python programming or R programming, which is true. Okay, that's one of the entry point or one of the ways to break into data science if you want to. But the main reason that you need to learn all those things, right, is because Excel or other graphical user interface based tools can't really help you with that. And if you deploy that to a server, for example, right, and you remote control into a machine like a hacker, you don't usually have the luxury of to have a user interface. So that's the main reason why we need something that's command line or programming based. That's all. And apart from that, if you just want to break into data science and you want to learn how data science works, you can use all sort of other tools. We have visualization tools, we have BI tools like Tableau, Power BI, we have other open source tools like Orange. It can help you to analyze data as well, and only you need to pick up programming language and command lines tools later on when you scale up. Yeah.
So there's actually some questions actually like how big data how big of big data should companies start first? Like most of the people entrepreneurs, so they might not have the extensive amount of data that like some of these big companies have. Like what should they do? Like what should they start first?
Okay, actually, my three-step process, right? The first step is actually start small, not start big. Remember just now during my slideless presentation where I talk about you need to have that thinking. You don't start with everything. You can have that picture in your mind, in your head, in your blueprint. That's fine, absolutely fine. But when you start, you must start somewhere that's small. So the easiest way that I would suggest entrepreneurs to do is start small, think big, and then scale fast. Where in the tech business, right, most of us are. Even if you are not, you should always be thinking how can you utilize or make the technology works for you so that you can scale your business fast. So if you're worried about you have a small data, that's actually something very common. What you should be really worrying is if you have a small problem, and if you have solved a small problem that does not generate enough value, and that's something that you need to avoid. So to pull it back to our topic today, right? If you have a very small data to start with, I would suggest you break down to all the business processes in your current company. Let's say, let's say you're an e-commerce store, right? You
Hmm.
have a couple of steps. The first step is actually to generate the leads and then to bring the traffic to your store. And then the next steps is to see how much time they spend on your e-commerce website, and then followed by what is the conversion rate, right? This is the general use case or general flow. And you should list them down and see what sort of information, what sort of data that you can collect. Now, if you are using a platform like Lazada and Shopee, obviously you can't get too much of the information of those people who came to your website, because this data is owned by Lazada and Shopee. So what you can do is you look at the conversion side, you look at the best selling products, and then from there you start to grow. Use some other methods like to collect their email addresses and grow your data from there. Ultimately, if you want to grow your brand, if you want to grow a store, then you should step up and have your own website, or at least run on other platform that gives you more data analytics, like Shopify, for example. Yeah, so this is just one of the way to look at it.
So one of the questions actually is that how do you obtain big data sources and how do you perform correlation for valuable, useful information? Like,
Okay, that's a good question. So when we talk about if you're allowed to share screen, right?
sure,
Okay, yeah. So just share the screen again. I don't mind staying for a bit for this one. Yeah.
no worries.
Okay, so these are the types of unstructured data that contributes to big data that you have. So you have photos, you have music, you have videos and text. So these are the platforms that, let's say you go to YouTube, you go to Facebook, they are happily giving you all the analytics that you need to, and you can analyze the content from, let's say, if, again, we go back to I shouldn't be keep using e-commerce as example. It's just that something that everybody can relate easily, right? Let's say you have a lot of products that have reviews, or even you run a hotel or you run an Airbnb. You should have a lot of information that's related to text. People leave comments, people leave reviews, and this is where you extract or you obtain your big data sources that can help you to understand how well they perform. And if you realize that, like we spend a lot of time on other platforms to grow our followers or grow our presence, like Clubhouse and stuff like that, these sort of platforms, they also give you other types of things. So you look at these platform that gives you extra informations from other type of sources, and you can use that to look inwards, meaning to look at your own business, and you can use it to look outwards to understand how the entire market or how the entire industry works. Yeah, so to collect big data is not expensive, but sometimes you need to have the right tools and understand which data matters the most for your organizations.
So one of the question that was really popular is how should business for business who just started, how should they plan and structure their data collection? I think you mentioned a few examples over it. Like maybe you want to dive into, let's say, a common business that is ventured by the group is actually like F&B. Like, what should they start? What
Okay,
advice would you give them?
yeah. So for F&B, right, most of you start you after you got your store, the next thing that you do is to start a Facebook page. But having a Facebook page itself is insufficient for you to have more in-depth engagement and communication with your customers to get data. So for example, if you're running a restaurant, right, how do you identify those people who are the first timer or who came the second time? That you pretty much can't, right? So
You
you
can.
should have, yeah, you pretty much you need to have some sort of mechanisms that help you to identify them. So maybe for those of them who came the first time, you give them a token or you give them a card, and then the second time when they come, right, you recommend them something. So the first time when they come, you say, okay, today I'm going to recommend you our chicken rice, for example. And then what you're going to do is, after they have paid their bill, right, you say, oh, you seems pretty full. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to recommend you our, let's say, char siu, okay, or our our roast pork, for example. And then you give them a voucher, and this voucher or this particular card, right, is only dedicated to these people. And if you look at a lot of people, they give flyers, right, they also do not use any sort of tracking mechanism on those flyers. So when people come back for a return visit, there's no way that you know how many percent of these customers actually come back and do a return visit. Yeah, so what you should do is, if you give flyers or you do some sort of traditional type of promotions using some sort of like a voucher type or cash vouchers, put a code on that. Yeah, put some sort of tracking mechanism like what we have been doing in Google. So install these sort of tiny little physical pixels in your marketing promotional material and start collecting their information. And then the third time when they come back, now do not ask for their contact in the first or second time. And then I know nowadays it's very easy to get those information because they order online, Food Panda,
Yeah.
GrabFood and stuff. And then once you get their number, just start to blast message to them. Don't make friends with them, right? Don't be a salesman. Don't be a sneak always salesman, but be their friend. So different special seasons when you have special promotions, then you message them so that they what they felt is like, wow, this restaurant remembers me, they have me in mind, rather than shit, every time I receive a message you're going to hard sell something and ask me. But you should organize something that's private. So all these tiny little thing, right, it contributes and adds up to your big data. Yeah, and then you should have, I see some, we all know what are the shops that are very very smart and very good at telling a story, engaging their people to tag them on Instagram, for example, right? See, these are the things that people do. Oh, tag, share. But what do I get from sharing this information to my friend? And there's no way that you can track, right? So all these tiny little things, if you can spend some time to keep track of them, and there are a lot of Google Chrome extensions that you can download, or a lot of mini little scripts that you can use that helps you to keep track of this information, and have a more have a slightly bigger plans when you look into a strategy. Don't just focus into something like conversion or a particular metrics. I think that would be my suggestion.
I want to add a bit on that. One of the restaurants that I really like is this restaurant over in PJ called Table Apron. They use a CRM system to track their patrons. So they know a lot like your birthdays, like they
Yep.
know what your regular orders, and it's always so surprisingly because every time you go there is there's a new waiter. So, oh, we haven't seen you in. It's not. It sounds freaky, but it's not
Yeah.
really. It sounds freaky, but oh yeah, we haven't seen it for a while. Then I was like, oh, then I was like, oh, I still don't remember, but they actually know when the last time I came over, what they ordered, and so on. And that then they said, oh, sorry, we don't have. We know you like this meatball, but we don't have this on stock. And it's like, oh my god, I was like, my loyalty is so actually. So
Yeah, exactly, and that itself become a positive feedback loop that reinforce learning kind of stuff in technical terms lah. So you will increase your loyalty, and you really, unless something major happens, otherwise
mm,
you're more likely or most likely will come back to the shop again, right? Yeah.
that's a weird question. Where to buy all this data?
Okay, now as I always tell Daniel, right? When I come to your show, because we do a lot of shows other places as well, I'm always open, and I'm always ready to answer all questions. Now, do not buy data elsewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, every type of data that you can buy from the marketplace is like a sugar cane that has been squeezed a couple of times. Then only they will leak to the market and end up in your hand. Okay, let me give you a very simple example: password database. When somebody managed to hack into a database, okay, whether it's a bank or website, it doesn't matter, and they get the first-hand information of the passwords, do you think the first thing that it comes to their mind is to go to Pasar Malam and sell to you? Those marketplaces, whether you say called Lawyat or whatever, right? Those people that are selling passwords, they got it from you. You are the third or fourth hand
Yeah.
information already. Yeah, the first hand information, they will sell it to the syndicate or the organizations that pay them best. Okay, they pay the highest amount of money so that they can use those things for to maximize their revenue lah, to maximize their output, right? So don't buy data from those third party, because for example, okay, I can tell you, I got a database, for example, like I got a database for a list of people who have who just gotten their bank loan approved, okay, last month. When it landed in your hand, if it's a third hand or fourth hand, you call that person, the person is like, shit, somebody is calling me again to hard sell me something. Do you think they will be happy? No, you won't be happy, right? You just get pissed off and hang up their phone. So whether you get a password database or you get some analytics or any sort of email addresses, for example, right? These information probably not going to help you much. And if you are running a CRM, let's say you are using MailChimp, right? Chances are, if you buy a bulk database like this and load into your CRM system, you will get your mail account got blacklist. Yeah, that's the worst thing that you don't want it to happen. And if you import this into your Facebook pixels, and these will cause your pixels to be, I don't want to see this ads again. I don't want to see this ads again. So trust me, yeah, you're going to get more negative impact. But a more appropriate way is like, okay, if you want to spend, right, you can buy this sort of data from the research house, but it's a bit pointless lah. And I don't think you can justify your ROI with that amount of money that you are paying.
Yeah, that's actually something that your own data is always much more valuable
Yeah.
than buying data. And I think one of our audience actually commented like scraping own data generator, buy data, partnership, consulting. I think Jay was saying that. So what are your thoughts about it? Like scraping and also partnership at getting partnership to acquire new data.
Okay, so getting partnership is not something wrong. But you need to think laterally, but not vertically, right? So a lot of time when people look at industry, they see the industry as a zero sum game. This is a bit off big data lah, and it's more towards the marketing side. When you partner with somebody, your common goal is not like, okay, you get their mailing list exchange with you, and then you exchange your mailing list with them, so that you both have an expanded mailing list, right? This will be the the crude way to see it. But what you really need to do is, how can you bring value to their customers,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then how their customers can be benefited from your service, and how they can bring value to your customers, and vice versa. So that's why first thing first is you need to have a mailing list that they are willing to listen to you. Like over at Lead, right, we have a mailing list of 10,000 people, and generally our open rate is about 30 to 40%, depends on topics, because we have a mixed topics. But that is the way to go. Yeah, because people find value. And when they say value, it could be like our case, it could be education value, it could be entertainment value. Sometimes I read something funny, or we posted some videos that you can only see through our platform or through our channels, right? So those are some values. But if you just partner with somebody with a mentality to exchange databases, right? They will feel it very odd. Like, hey, how come I did not subscribe to this? Let's say you subscribe to service A, okay, or company A, and then you suddenly receive email from B, which is irrelevant or something that's strange. Yeah, you will definitely tune off and block that as well. Right? Probably Google will help you to Gmail will help you to block that away as well. So if you have that sort of partnership opportunities, right, you nurture the relationship first, and then ask for their permissions to market to them. This is something that's very old, but I think a lot of people sometimes you just in this era, they just want something quick, something fast, and they just say, okay, like a growth hack. But this is not really a growth hack, and this sort of growth hack usually will bring you, maybe I don't even think that there will be any short term benefits. They will just straight away shoot yourself in your own foot. Yeah.
Yeah, like do not do that. Like I have to stress, like always, your own data is much more important, and like preserving that, and like Dr. Lau said, data is the new gold. So actually having control of your own goal, and even like you steal other people's goals doesn't really make any difference. So jumping on that note, also, one of the freaky things that most people when they are on Facebook and so on is like you know where I'm going with this. When you mention like, oh, I'm looking to buy something that Facebook display those ads and so on. Like can you share some insights about what actually has happened instead of Facebook listening to you?
Okay. All right. Once again, I'm not going to give you a yes and no answer, but I'm going to give you a very pretentious scientist answer, is that there's no significance, or there's no sufficient evidence that suggests and prove that Facebook, WhatsApp, whatever apps that you're using are listening to you, especially if you're on iPhone, right? Android, I cannot be so sure, because there are a lot of malware, there are a lot of funny softwares that pretend like there are other softwares. Like for example, Clubhouse, right? A lot of different flavors of Clubhouse available on Android, but none of them are the real one. We don't have one. So if you install something like that, then they will request for all sort of uh, basically full permissions that they can record your screen, they can look your SMS, they can access your contact list, and you are in trouble. All right, so that's number one. But number two is from a technical standpoint, yeah, you can try to turn on your microphone, or you just call somebody and let the call run for, let's say, 30 minutes. You realize how hot is your phone and how fast the battery drains. So if Facebook and WhatsApp are really listening to your conversation, just to because they want to distill some valuable information from what you have been talking with your friends, that technically is not viable as well, because your battery will drain very fast and it wouldn't even last for half a day. All right, this is number two. And number three, you probably want to challenge me with this question. Then how do they get to know what you want? From a psychology standpoint, right? Those ads probably are there. So for example, if Daniel and I was talking about let's go and eat ramen. We're talking about it right now. And then I'm sure that later on when I turn on my Facebook page, right, there will be some food delivery website that shows me ramen. And that is probably because you will be thinking, right? Conspiracy theory will say, "Oh, see, you guys are talking about ramen, and now I see ramen on my feed." But that is probably because Daniel and I have been talking about ramen, and I have been seeing those ads, but my eyes is trained to filter those things. You know, your brain is trained for filtering those ads, and then suddenly, after you have talked about it, and then your brain will pay extra attention to those things because you have just mentioned it, man. And the second thing is from a technical or big data standpoint, probably not me who are searching for that. This app knows that, okay, Daniel and I are close friends, and we were just together on a Facebook live stream together. Maybe not me who are searching for ramen, but Daniel went ahead and searched for ramen, and then it appears on my feed. And sometimes also, you and your friend are not talking about a particular thing. For example, you guys are talking about Nike, right? But Puma or Adidas bought an ad to target everybody who is who talks about Nike or who search about Nike, and then you will realize that, hey, shit, I just talked about sports shoes, and then it appears. Yeah, so this sort of survival bias, I can give you tons of psychological model that fits into this sort of conspiracy theory lah. But long story short, no, there's no there's not enough evidence that suggests that any of these apps are eavesdropping our conversation and using that your privacy information to just to display an ads to you. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, the model that some of these big companies, like from their big data that they have collected from everything, is so accurate they don't need to listen to us to know.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No. I just want to raise the topics of Pixel. So maybe Daniel can help to share the links of Facebook Pixel helper for Google Chrome in the Facebook chat, right? If you're watching this, and install this extension, you will see that how many websites is actually secretly collecting everything about yourself. Every website that you have been to are watched by Facebook and Google, all these tycos lah. Yeah, it's a lot. So go back to our topic today, right? This sort of big data is a lot more effective. Your activities, your browsing histories, your cookies, a lot more effective than recording your voice conversation on your phone and try to do some sort of like text analytics from there. Yeah, a lot easier to do. Daniel, I can't hear you.
Another question is basically from in terms of this, how do you determine the quality of your data, and what advice can you give?
Okay, so depends on what data that you collect. This is actually a good question. So garbage in, garbage out. If you collect a lot of data so it comes with whether you monitor and keep track of your health of your business or not. Right? I always I always share this story, right? When you are not feeling well, or you go to hospitals, you do your regular checkups, especially you are at my age, once a year or once every 2 years, and to know your blood sugars, your what else, your cholesterol levels, and blood pressure, right? But for a company, they usually don't do that. You go around and ask the 90% of the SMEs in Malaysia, how many of them actually have a business dashboard? They are we're sort of like bound by the laws that we need to lodge our income tax, and we need to submit our profit and loss P&L. We do our accounts. Apart from that, there are not many people that look into their cash flows. They don't look into any sort of tracking process. So if you are collecting big data and use that in your decision making process, right, keep track of and see what happens. All right. So if you are collecting a lot of email addresses and you send out newsletter, keep track of your open rate and see how many of these emails that open that actually leads to a conversion. And from there, you can optimize the outcomes and optimize your data and understand the quality. So if you have collected, let's say we go back to the newsletter, right? If you have collected a newsletter 1,000 email addresses, and then you send them like 10 newsletter, and your open rate is consistently below 10% or consistently below 5%, then you will know that either your content is not good for these particular subscribers, or these subscribers is not your target audience, it's not your right TA. You probably got the email addresses through a wrong way. Like you use promotions to attract them, you use discount to attract them, but when you want to sell them something of full price product, and then they don't want to buy because you have attracted somebody who are just here to seek for deals, right? This is just one of the classic examples. So, and then you need to segmentize your customers, segmentize your mailing list, and then rerun your campaign again. Yeah, these are some of the easiest way to keep track of them.
Yeah, in fact, a smaller, clean data set is much more valuable than a really, really big data set.
Yeah.
We have, before I go ask about Corona Tracker, I think we have one more question from the audience. How do we submit dispute data when they have their own respondent? I'm not sure if
How
you
do
get
we
that.
submit what?
Dispute data when they have their own respondent.
I don't quite get it. Can
I also don't quite get it
Yeah,
also.
maybe the question asker can elaborate a little bit, and we'll come back to it. No problem.
Okay, if we have time, we come back to it. But
Mm-hmm.
before we let you off, I want to ask just about this. So, talking about the Corona Tracker, and what have you learned actually from building it so far?
Quite a number of things. Number one is when you feel like doing something. Right, this is more for the entrepreneur side of myself, and not so much of the big data experts. When you have some idea, right, go ahead and build it. There will be a lot of people. There will be a lot of. I wouldn't say they are negative voices or they are positive voices. It doesn't work that way. You basically just have to acknowledge that there are a lot of different voices out there, especially in this era, right? So build something and then find your first 100 users, first 1,000 users. This has been mentioned many times, that people who love your product, and the reason why they love your product, they need your existence, is because your product helps them to solve a particular problem that is really painful, right? So it's always like something that's an addiction, yeah.
Mm,
You become addicted, or something that's a painkiller, or something that is like a candy, right? Makes them feel good. So a game, a mobile phone games is more like a candy, but if you have too much sugar, and then you become addiction, right? And Corona Tracker is more about a painkiller. We created this product because we realized that there's a huge pinpoint that people really need to know. At one point, if you compare today and a year ago, right? A year ago we have 10, 100, 50 to 100 cases. We're all very panicked, and we're all very obedient, wearing our mask. And then after we have been dealing with this virus for a while, and we sort of like understand the risk versus the effect of following the SOPs or not, that sort of thing. So ultimately it comes down to that sort of things. Yeah? So if you really think that this product worth building it, and you know that there are users who needs that, then go ahead and build it. That's the first lesson. And from a data standpoint is that when we build this product, right, a lot of people are doing the same thing also, but we have a mindset of opening it out instead of making it a closed systems. I think Daniel knows this very well.
mm,
We look for like some of the suggestions that we gave earlier. We look for partnerships. You look for platforms. Like for example, we partner with our local media, and we give them access to our data so that they can show it on their websites. And we partner with Touch and Go, etc. And they pull our data directly and use it to give extra values to their members. So this is a classic use case where a data like this can help a lot more people and give them value because it solves their needs, their information needs. And the last thing that I want to mention is, don't always look at structured data, right? Tables data, rows and columns, everybody also can get it. Everybody can analyze it. But if you look at our data, we have structured data, we have unstructured data, we have scraping from news websites, travel websites as well. So we have a combination of different types of data, which is going to help the users a lot as well. Yeah, so from a this map this map is really useless right now lah, because the whole world is becoming yeah, but we keep it for the sake of having a map lah. Yeah, but
I think this one, yeah, just looking at some of the cases and looking at all the stuff, I think when we have a heat map, when this thing is over, to just like show a time lapse over time.
yeah, animated map will be a lot more meaningful lah, in this case.
Okay, really appreciate. And I don't think we have the follow-up question from there, but thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Lau. So anything you want to share, and where can people find out about what you're doing and so on?
Okay, so I think I'm just going to share my profile page again. So I can share my screen. So
And
okay, let's just go to the first one. Today we talk about understanding big data for entrepreneurs. So you can follow the Lead IO. We have especially our YouTube channels. We have a lot of interesting videos, tutorial videos. And if you are watching it as a entrepreneurs, we also have a series of tutorials on data science and teach you how to hire your first team members, and also what are the different things that you can do using data to help you to grow your business. And also, if you have any follow up questions, feel free to use the handler Dr. Han Lao at Dr. Han Lao. You can find me on most of the platforms: Twitter, LinkedIn, Clubhouse, Instagram.
Clubhouse.
Yeah. And that's all I want to say. Thank you very much, Daniel, for the invitation and the opportunity to share to your group members.
So for Clubhouse, are you doing anything regular at this point in time?
See, that's the thing, right? At first, we were quite active and we run our own rooms. And nowadays, I'm just joining other people's room, and that is enough to keep me busy most of the time.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Lau.
Yeah,
That's super insightful. Hopefully, you guys learned
thanks.
something to actually start with your big data journey as an entrepreneur, to understand what are the things that you can actually do with big data. And also, thank you very much for ASUS, especially the expert series, for actually making this possible. If you are an entrepreneur and definitely you're looking for something reliable, especially a super long battery life that you do not have to be tattered when we can start traveling. This is something really amazing. Do check it out. And Dr. Lau, thanks again. Really appreciate it. See you
Thanks.
soon.
All right, chat soon. Bye bye.
Bye. We're in the stream.